The easiest person to control is not always the weakest person in the room. Sometimes it is the one with the most polished life, the highest income, the busiest calendar, and the least room to absorb disruption. Control does not always arrive through force. It often arrives through dependence, through bills that cannot pause, through comfort that cannot be reduced, through status that must be maintained, through a lifestyle that looks successful enough to impress others, but not stable enough to survive pressure. That is why financial freedom is not only about having more money. It is about becoming harder to corner, harder to rush, harder to manipulate, and harder to own. And that begins with habits. Number 1, protect margin like it is part of your identity. Margin is the distance between you and desperation. It is the quiet space between an unexpected problem and a bad decision. Financially, that means reserves, lower burn, fewer fixed obligations. Emotionally, it means less panic when conditions shift. Strategically, it means you can still think when other people are reacting. Most people destroy margin the moment life begins to improve. They upgrade too early, commit too quickly, and build a life that leaves no room for reality. But margin is not laziness. Margin is insulation. It is what keeps your standards alive when circumstances turn cold. Number 2, separate income from freedom. A lot of people confuse the two because they often move together at first. Income rises, life improves, pressure softens, and for a moment it feels like freedom. But freedom is not what you earn. Freedom is what remains when earning becomes uncertain. If your entire stability depends on uninterrupted inflow, then income may be helping you, but it is also holding your life hostage. Financially mature people ask a different question. Not, how much do I make, but, how much of my life stays intact if the pace changes? That question changes how you spend, how you save, how you negotiate, and how you define progress. Number 3, reduce financial noise. A noisy life is easier to control than a quiet one. Too many subscriptions. Too many upgrades. Too many small obligations disguised as harmless comforts. Too many things asking to be paid, maintained, justified, and emotionally protected. Noise crowds judgment. It makes weak opportunities look necessary. It makes poor timing feel urgent. It makes ordinary stress feel like emergency. When you reduce financial noise, you do not just save money. You restore signal. You hear your own priorities more clearly. You see which expenses support your life and which ones merely decorate it. A quieter system creates cleaner decisions. Cleaner decisions create power. Number 4, build reserves before you build image. There is a reason cash reserves are so underrated. They are not flashy. Nobody compliments your emergency fund at dinner. Nobody leans forward because your liquidity is strong. Nobody sees your breathing room the way they see your car, your clothes, your address, your watch, or your photos. But reserves do something visible luxury cannot do. They protect your standards under pressure. They let you pause. They let you refuse. They let you leave without humiliating yourself. They let you choose timing instead of being dragged by it. A person with reserves can still be polite, but they are much harder to control. Number 5, buy ownership before applause. Applause is immediate. Ownership is slow. That is exactly why ownership matters more. Applause gives emotional reward. Ownership changes your position. Income pays you for effort. Ownership pays you for structure. It can be equity, revenue share, assets, intellectual property, cash-flowing businesses, or even a skill-based product that keeps working after you stop touching it every hour. The more of your future depends only on labor, the easier it is for pressure to shape your life. Ownership is not just a wealth tool. It is a control tool. It moves you from being useful inside someone else's system to having a stake in your own. Number 6, make fewer decisions from discomfort. A surprisingly large amount of bad financial behavior has nothing to do with mathematics and everything to do with emotional regulation. People spend to reduce tension. They upgrade to soothe insecurity. They overcommit to calm fear. They accept poor terms because uncertainty feels heavier than compromise. The habit that makes you harder to control is not, never feel discomfort. It is, do not let discomfort negotiate on your behalf. Learn to sit with the impulse before acting. Delay the purchase. Delay the agreement. Delay the yes. Many financial traps lose their power if they are denied urgency. Control often begins the moment you stop reacting instantly. Number 7, increase leverage, not just effort. Effort alone makes you useful. Leverage makes you difficult to replace. If your strategy for safety is simply to work harder, you are still depending on continuous output to preserve stability. But when your skills compound across contexts, communication, money judgment, negotiation, systems thinking, persuasion, distribution, technical competence, you become more adaptable. You gain more ways to create value, more ways to recover from disruption, more ways to redirect without collapsing. People who are easy to control often have only one lane that works. People who are hard to control usually have several. Leverage gives you options, and options reduce vulnerability. Number 8, protect your reputation in private. Public image can attract attention, but private reputation creates access. The strongest opportunities often move quietly, through trusted rooms, through conversations you are not in, through people deciding who they want near serious responsibility. If your name is associated with calm judgment, clean execution, discretion, and coherence under pressure, you become more difficult to exclude from future value. That matters because financial control often enters when your opportunities become too narrow. A strong private reputation widens them again. It gives you alternative doors before you need them. And anyone with credible alternatives becomes harder to pressure through one failing path. Number 9, use comfort carefully. Comfort is not the enemy. Dependency is. Comfort becomes dangerous when it quietly raises the minimum conditions required for you to feel okay. The more expensive your normal becomes, the more fragile your future can get. Suddenly your peace depends on higher income, more consistency, more cooperation, more favorable conditions, more support from outside yourself. That gives pressure too much authority over your life. Financially disciplined people enjoy refinement, but they are careful about what comfort turns into requirement. They know the carrying cost of a luxury is not only monthly, it is psychological. It shapes what you will tolerate to keep it. Number 10, create optionality before you need rescue. The most expensive time to build alternatives is when pressure has already arrived. That is when people panic into bad deals, weak partnerships, rushed roles, desperate pivots, and false urgency. Optionality built early feels unimpressive. A second income path, a reserve of time, a cleaner network, a small asset, a valuable side skill, a business relationship that could become a bridge later. None of it looks dramatic when life is stable. But the moment conditions change, optionality becomes elegant. It gives you routes. It lets you move without collapse. It makes control more difficult because your future no longer depends on one fragile source. Number 11, stop making your lifestyle your argument. Some people do not just live in their environment. They use it to prove that they matter. That is when spending becomes especially dangerous. The apartment is not just shelter. It becomes identity. The car is not transportation. It becomes status proof. The routine is not preference. It becomes a defense against inner doubt. The more your environment is used to argue for your worth, the harder it becomes to simplify intelligently. Because simplification starts to feel like personal diminishment. Financial habits that make you harder to control begin where your worth is decoupled from display. Then choices become strategic again, not emotional theater. Number 12, train yourself to value calm over stimulation. Stimulation looks alive. Calm looks ordinary. That is why so many people underestimate it. But calm is one of the clearest signs that your systems are working. It means every fluctuation does not hijack you. Every invoice does not insult you. Every shift in pace does not threaten your identity. Calm does not mean passivity. It means your structure is carrying more of the weight. In finance, calm often signals reserves, margin, optionality, lower dependence, better sequencing, and stronger judgment. A person with financial calm is not easy to frighten into compliance. And fear is one of the oldest control mechanisms in the world. Now, all of these habits share the same hidden purpose. They are not only about getting richer. They are about lowering your obedience. That is the part many people miss. If one client can reshape your standards, if one employer can define your dignity, if one delayed payment can wreck your judgment, if one monthly cost can narrow your courage, then the issue is not just money. The issue is control. And control is often surrendered through tiny, elegant habits long before anyone notices it happening. The solution is not aggression. It is structure. Quietly built, deliberately reinforced, repeated until your life becomes less available to manipulation. There is also a social reason these habits matter. The world reads calm differently. When you are not leaking urgency, people feel it. When you are not trying to impress, people notice it. When your standards do not collapse under inconvenience, the right people begin to take you more seriously. Real status often comes not from display but from coherence, from not rushing, from not oversharing, from not needing every interaction to protect your identity. Financial habits that make you harder to control also make your presence harder to cheapen. They reduce the invisible pressure that forces so many people to perform certainty they have not yet built. This is why discipline should not be framed as punishment. Real discipline is protection. It is what keeps a good month from becoming a bad long-term decision. It is what keeps temporary emotion from becoming permanent architecture. It is what stops progress from inflating into dependency. The disciplined person is not saying no because they enjoy denial. They are saying no because they understand sequence. First stability, then optionality, then leverage, then refinement. And only then can beauty remain light to carry. Without that sequence, success starts to harden into something strangely fragile, elegant on the surface, brittle underneath. If you want to test whether your current habits are making you harder or easier to control, ask a few uncomfortable questions. How long could your life remain coherent if income slowed? How many of your expenses are actually protecting your future, and how many are protecting an image? What part of your comfort is useful, and what part is now negotiating on behalf of your insecurity? What have you normalized that quietly narrows your range? Which commitments make you more capable, and which ones simply make your success more visible? The answers usually reveal whether your habits are building freedom or just managing appearances. The goal is not to become cold, small, or joyless. That is the shallow interpretation. The goal is to become structurally free enough that joy does not have to be financed through fragility. To live well without becoming easy to pressure. To enjoy beauty without needing it for emotional survival. To have standards that remain intact when conditions shift. To choose well under tension. To move through success without becoming dependent on the maintenance of its most visible symbols. That is what people mean, whether they know it or not, when they say they want financial freedom. They want a life that still belongs to them under stress. So if you want to become harder to control, do not begin with image. Begin with insulation. Lower your noise. Increase your reserves. Protect your margin. Build ownership. Strengthen leverage. Reduce emotional spending. Create optionality. Defend your reputation. Sequence comfort carefully. These habits may not photograph as well as luxury does. They may not impress the room immediately. But over time they do something far more valuable. They give your future backbone. And a life with backbone does not bend every time money, status, or pressure changes direction. In the end, that is the difference. Weak habits make your life beautiful but negotiable. Strong habits make your life quieter but sovereign. The first kind of success can be admired. The second kind can be trusted. And once you understand that, your financial life stops being a performance designed to look stable. It becomes a structure built to remain so. That is when money changes meaning. It stops being something you chase to feel safe. It becomes a tool you organize so your standards, your time, your peace, and your future are no longer easy for the world to control. If you want a life that is harder to pressure, harder to manipulate, and harder to control, subscribe. Here we build real wealth, true status, and the kind of quiet power that holds under pressure.